I'm Julie with Julie's Realty out of North Bay Village. I've been in the real estate business for the past 19 years, and I've been specializing in foreclosures for the past 10 years. So as many of you know, foreclosures come with a lot of headaches, right? With a lot of problems. And so who here likes to deal with violations and open permits? Is that anyone's favorite thing to do? Okay, woo! I love this room. Okay, awesome. Because I actually do. I enjoy it. I love the hairier the deal, the better for me, because I love resolving issues. So I'm glad you guys are here, because I'm going to give you some tit points, some things you can take away, and I think you'll be able to apply in order to resolve problems. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are, right? In real estate, we are problem solvers. Not every deal is the same. A lot of times you will come across a situation that's very different, but we got to roll up our sleeves and we got to get this deal done, right? Whatever it takes. So, we do have a lot of hats that we wear as realtors, right? And one of them is dealing with violations. So if we want to get the deal closed, I mean, you got to figure it out. And so here I'm going to give you guys a little crash course and some information to make it a little easier to get the deals done. So your best resource is the internet, Google. So if you guys have any problems, anything that you've come across that you're not sure, use Google. I promise you a lot of the answers are going to be there. But again, I'm going to show you some of the best resources and access to the information that I utilize in order to help me with my transactions. And so here we go. Your house has an open permit violation. What should you do? First things first, you get a notice of violation, right? So initially, when a notice of violation is posted, you still have time in order to comply without actually accruing any fines. But you do need to pay attention to it. But a lot of times when you do get to it, it's already past the time period and there's probably accrued fines. So you do need to look at that. You have, this one is about also expired permits. So sometimes you have a property that has an open permit or it has an expired permit. So if there's an open permit on the property, you need to bring it into compliance. Now that means that there is work that hasn't been finished. That means that in order for you to be possibly to get financing, you need to be able to close out that permit. So you need to, sometimes also the open permit now has been open, now it's expired because a lot of time has passed by. The code has changed, the building code has changed. The plans that are on record are no longer good. So there's a lot of things that you need to know and be aware of that you may need to deal with. And also the most important thing, if a permit goes basically ignored, it is something that can become a violation with certain municipalities. So there are certain municipalities that treat, because they have different ordinances, so those different ordinances apply to each different municipality. So, you know, I can't speak across the board with, you know, one particular situation. So you do need to inquire in the city or in the municipality that you work in, because it might be a little different. So a violation is something like equivalent to a traffic ticket. If you don't take care of it, it's going to become a bigger issue, something a little bit more expensive than a traffic ticket. So make sure that you don't ignore it, or explain at least to your clients that it's not something that should be ignored. It's something that could be dealt with. And I think the most important thing that I want you guys to take away with this is communication. Communication is key. So if there is an issue and you're dealing with a client, you need to tell your client that they need to make sure all those things are communicated to you, because you could be on the forefront of these situations to be able to deal with it before it becomes a bigger issue. Code compliance officers, they want to work with you. They don't want to have these issues existing, even though you think otherwise. But believe me, I've been doing it for a long time. A lot of these code enforcement officers are my friends, and I can pick up the phone and I can tell them, hey, I have this property, this is the situation. I need you please to help me out, tell me what I need to do. And you know what? A lot of times they will work with you, they will tell you, they'll even meet you at the property and they will tell you, hey, you need to fix this, this, and that. So again, make them your best friends, but the key here is communication. And you gotta relate that to your client, because a lot of times they're like, oh, you know, they'll find out about it later, you know, no worries. But no, they need to communicate with you. Also, we have time for compliance, right? Now, a lot of times in Dade County, it's 90 days for compliance on average. However, you can request for an extension of compliance. Again, communication, there's different websites that you can utilize depending on the city you're working in. Sometimes you need to go in person and you need to request it, but there is an opportunity to get an extension without having to incur any fines. But if you don't, then to undo that, it's pretty much impossible. So you need to make sure, again, you communicate. Again, if there is a violation on the property, financing is going to be an issue, and that's a big, big no-no. So again, there are things that could be on there, but don't be scared, because everything that does exist on the property, you can get worked out. So I have Stacy here. Obviously, I'm from Miami, so I have Stacy here who's going to help me to talk about Monroe County and Key West and how it works over here.
Can you all hear me without the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you?
So I know a majority of you are not from the Keys, so we'll try to make this brief. Everyone here that is from the Keys, we know how to look up a property using the property appraiser's website to get the pertinent information, either your alt key number or your RE number. So that's, I think we use IMAP here in Miami-Dade. On the county website, in case you're not familiar, you go to the eGov Plus. There is a new search, but because it's brand new, we haven't used it yet. You can go to eGov Plus. In there, you throw in the RE number, and it will bring up a property record card. On that property record card, you have options. There's tabs. If you click all, it will show you everything about that property. It shows you the history of all building permits, whether they're open or closed. If there is a code violation, it is listed. And this is for all the counties in the property, to my knowledge, except for the City of Key West. City of Key West, we have our own separate government website for the building permits. But for the county, you're going to do the eGov Plus, and that will show you the complete record card. We can do a lunch and learn on that if anybody wants to dig further into it, but it is truly as simple as getting the property address in there. And let me tell you, sometimes the less is better on that. Put in your property address ID number, or possibly just the street number and part of the street name. You don't want to use the street, the and, anything funky. The less is better, and you will get a full property record card from the county. In the City of Key West, we actually have a separate website that you can now look at, and it's Build It. Did we bring it up? I don't remember. Nope, that's the county. So anyway, on the city. Yeah, we're not there. Okay, so on the city website, there is under the building department, there is a lookup in there as well, and it's a new permit search there. And again, property address is all you need. Less is better. Use the number and the street name, and it again will pull up a full record card on your property showing any and all permits that are issued. You can actually dig in. So like if it's a pool permit, you can pull back to the other side of it and see if there's any open things like a pool bond or anything like that. Code compliance may or may not be in there. So if you are especially in the City of Key West, you may want to pick up the phone and make the phone call to the offices to just verify that there's no compliance issues or code cases open against it.
Awesome.
Sure.
Is it okay to ask questions now, or you want us to wait till later?
No,
You can go ahead.
Just hold on.
In the Keys, when you've got an elevated concrete structure, and then you bring over a trailer and drop it on top of the concrete structure, and the trailer has a manufactured code approved by HUD, does that instantly become real property? That one?
No. No.
Just a simple question.
Okay, yeah. As all of the people from the Keys now are laughing because, there's no simple questions like that. No.
It's a process.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the deal with the building moratorium? What that exists? What is it? Like you can't build on certain lots?
Absolutely. We are an area of critical concern, so we have a very limited number of building permits, and they are allotted on a point system and a date system, and there's a whole thing in our code that will tell you exactly how those points are garnered, where the lot is, if it's environmentally sensitive or not, and then we have X amount of building permits that we can actually issue at a time. So there is the possibility that in about 4 years or 5 years, we will have no more building permits in the county.
Wow.
Is that more of an environmental issue, or is that more of an infrastructure issue?
Both. Both.
Can we continue?
Absolutely.
Has anything changed recently with the city of Key West? You know, for the longest time, we had the problem with open permits from 20 years ago, and the property had changed hands 3 times.
There's actually a new law, I guess, signed in just recently when we were up in Tallahassee. We were fighting for it, and there will be some adjustments to closing out old and expired building permits. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Miss Julie because she's got fabulous information for the people that are not the keys about their stuff. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacy. Appreciate it. All right, so now back to Miami. So this is a website you guys have to be very familiar with, especially if you're working with Miami-Dade properties. This is unincorporated Miami-Dade, so we're gonna focus, because if not, we're gonna be here for days. So right now we're really gonna focus on unincorporated Miami-Dade, and this is the site that you wanna be very familiar with. So take a picture, save it, know it. This is the information where you can actually look up a building, if there's any building violations or any open cases that exist for a particular property. So the best way to search is by folio number, because again, if you put in the address, sometimes it doesn't take the street name, or it's first instead of the number 1. So just to be sure, the safest bet is to always include the folio number when you're searching for a property. You can look for all cases, or you can see open cases only. So again, my advice is if you're taking on a listing, and especially if it's looking suspect, like things are falling apart, go on this site, look it up, because it's better to know the information beforehand and to be able to deal with the issues than to do all the work of listing, marketing, getting it under contract, and then finding out after you get the lien search that you have a whole laundry list of all these issues, right? So do your due diligence. So for this particular property, as an example, this particular property does have an outstanding case, and it has to do with work without a permit. So the good thing about this is that the system is very detailed, and you can actually open up the case and it shows you the history of everything that ever happens. If you call and you pick up the phone to call and find out information about this case, they're going to register that somebody called. They're going to put your information. You see, as it says, telephone call. Inspector spoke with whoever they spoke with. I even went to the county to deal with this particular property for an investor. But everything is super detailed. It even has pictures, so you really will know the details of all the violations that do exist. I mean, there is no guessing game. Everything is there. You also want to be familiar with this site as well. This is to search for any citations that exist for a property. Sometimes there could be, a dog citation. I see it all the time. That, a dog didn't get vaccinated, but it attaches to that person and the property that they own. So this is where you would go and research. So if that's something that comes up, you know about it before the lien search is even done, you can deal with it. Also, this site here, for instance, for the same property where you guys saw the building code violation, on here you also have the open citations that it has. Now, you see the first one that says $10,510. $510 of it is the face value of the citation. So before the county will even talk to you or do anything, they want you to pay the face value of that citation in order to release it. So you got to pay the face value, and then the $10,000 doesn't necessarily have to be paid. That $10,000 can be mitigated once the property is brought into compliance. So don't look at these numbers and right away get scared. Know what the citation is for, and then you can deal with the specific department in the lien section to talk to them about how to mitigate it, but we'll talk about that. So this is a violation for failure to obtain a building permit. So this particular property, the guy went in, he did a bunch of work to the property, he got caught, and now we have a violation on the property. And so you see the total due is $10,510. They'll gladly take the $10,510 if you want to pay it, but I'm telling you right now, the $510 is the face value. You just got to pay that in order to release it, and then they will only negotiate the lien or the fine, if it's not a lien yet, once it's brought into compliance. So how do you close out permits and violations? So if you do have a let's say an expired permit, like I'm dealing with one from 1989 right now. I mean, this was for a daycare that had a garage back in 1989 when it wasn't a daycare. It's been a daycare. They've already pulled, I don't know how many permits after that. So that permit really just needs to be closed out. So again, look at the permit, and now we just had to submit a form where they basically see that they have to do the research of the other permits and be able to close it out. Sometimes you do have an actual permit for work that has been done and maybe has been completed, and an inspection hasn't been called. Sometimes there was an inspection done, but the city or the county messed up. I've seen that too. So you can actually get the permit record and you can see what inspections were done or haven't been done, and then go ahead and ask them to send an inspector to get it closed out. I've seen that too. So again, research it, see the history of the permit to see if you actually do need to complete any work, or maybe it's just a closeout final inspection. Sometimes the work does need to be finished, so you will need to hire a contractor. Sometimes you will need to get an engineer because the work that's been done has been to amend the actual property. So sometimes you will need to do that. So for instance, if you have work without a permit violation, right? Or you have a permit that was open, but they never actually went through the necessary inspections, what happens is the city inspector can't validate the work that you did. And at that point, you're gonna actually have to hire an engineer that's gonna have to certify the work that was done in order to validate it. That's the only way, and they will need to send a certification letter confirming that they're taking on the liability, that the work was done up to code. So that's something too. So make sure if you guys are dealing with properties like these, you have architects that are on your side and you have engineers that are on your side that can help you to get this done. And again, know your zoning. So sometimes, there's a property that is zoned residential, in Hialeah, and then there's like 3 efficiencies. So, that's not going to pass the reoccupancy requirements, because a reoccupancy requirement requires that the zoning is being used the way that it's zoned. So know that too. We already kind of touched on the fact that you can mitigate the fines and the liens on the property. So don't get scared by the big numbers. Everything is negotiable in life, and that's my motto. So become friends with all the necessary people. Come see them in person. Sometimes that helps too. They are willing to help. They're not scary. There's also different programs available. So some names that you guys can look into is the Code Amnesty program for Miami-Dade County. I know Miami Gardens has it too. So if you are inheriting a property that has code violations, but they are in compliance and you have outstanding fines or liens, what happens is they actually right away will reduce the fines by, like, you only have to pay 10%, and sometimes I have had properties that have accrued liens and violations and fines for over $1 million. So in those cases, 10% is still a lot. So in those situations, we wouldn't, go down to the Code Amnesty program. I would actually go and do what's called a special magistrate. I don't know if any of you guys have ever gone and to any of those meetings, but basically this is where you're asking for something that's not already in their code, or something that is already regulated. So it's something that you're asking that hasn't been agreed to, such as reducing the lien or a fine to another amount that you would agree to accept. And also know the difference, because the counties and the cities, if they've incurred any hard costs on any of the liens or violations, those cannot be negotiated. So if those are in fact hard costs and they do have to disclose to you what they are, those are not going to be negotiable items. But anything that's just accruing fines, those are the ones that you can actually negotiate with. We also have something that's called a certificate of use for the foreclosed properties in unincorporated Miami-Dade. So those require for an actual engineer to do a full inspection. Those cost about $1,000. So banks, before they can actually sell the property, they have to do this whole CU report, which has to be filed with the county. And the reason for it is because the county is understaffed, and they basically just want to know everything that's wrong with the property, so that they can go ahead and put a violation and start fining you if you don't comply with the property. Which is great, because there's a lot of buyers out there that are jumping on and they want the property, but they're they're not really understanding everything that's going on, and it's an issue. So in hindsight, I think it's a great thing. It's giving a full disclosure to the prospective buyer. Again, we talked about reoccupancy inspections in some municipalities. That's a requirement. That's mainly for zoning. So they want to make sure that the property is being used for residential purposes and not multifamily, which a lot of places are not following. And those issues can become violations. However, also for reoccupancy, I want you guys to know, if a property fails for reoccupancy, and some municipalities don't only check for zoning, they check that if work wasn't done with permits. That's something that they will fine you for. So City of North Miami, for North Miami, they actually require a reoccupancy inspection. So they check if any work was done without a permit. And if any work was done without a permit, what they will do is they will actually fail the reoccupancy. You won't be able to, a lender's gonna have an issue with it because now it's gonna be an exception on title. So what they do is called the conditional reoccupancy agreement. So with the conditional reoccupancy agreement, the buyer is basically agreeing to take on the property as is, and within a certain time period to comply with those violations that came up. And a lot of time it's because work was done without a permit, and so they're taking on that responsibility. So the point of this is that if it fails, there is a solution. And if the solution is you're not getting it from that one person you're speaking to, go in person, speak to someone else, because I promise you there is always a solution to any problems. And that's about it. So this is my information. Hope you guys found it useful and can close a lot of properties.